Welcome to a special deep dive. Today, we're getting into a really fascinating work, almost forgotten now, from 1925. It's Robert Collier's The Secret of the Ages.
That's right.
Imagine having, like, a secret weapon for life. That's kind of what this book promises.
Hmm.
It feels less like those fleeting self-help fads.
Definitely. It's more of a timeless philosophy of mind.
Exactly.
And this deep dive, it's really about how Collier interpreted some foundational ideas about our potential. It's a really compelling look at the power of thought, the power of belief.
Distilled down so you can get informed fast.
Precisely.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack Collier's central argument. He claims the greatest discovery of modern times isn't some big scientific breakthrough or finding ancient ruins.
No, nothing external like that.
It's something much more personal, much more powerful, something inside you. Collier makes this, well, really bold claim right at the start. He asks, what's the most significant discovery? And he says, it's not finding those, 10-million-year-old dinosaur eggs in Mongolia?
Right. Or digging up King Tut's tomb, amazing as that was.
Or even Professor Lane figuring out the Earth is like 1.25 billion years old. Huge discoveries. But he looks past all that.
He does. He argues that from all this incredible research, humanity is finally grasping something he calls the life principle.
The life principle. Okay.
And this principle, he suggests, maybe came to Earth thousands, maybe millions of years ago. The key thing is the infinite power it puts right in our hands.
Infinite power. How does he describe it?
He gets quite poetic. He calls it Aladdin's fabled genie of the lamp, or
Mhm.
sometimes the mental giant that lives inside each of us.
Wow. So this inner force, this life principle, anyone can just call on it
Yeah.
at will.
That's his core assertion. It sounds incredibly empowering, doesn't it?
It really does. So how does that actually work in practice, according to him?
Well, he posits that this power is essentially the servant of your mind, just like Aladdin's genie.
Okay.
It's the force, he believes, that drove Hannibal across the Alps. It's what pushed Edison to all his inventions, what allowed Henry Ford to build that massive fortune.
So not just for historical figures.
Not at all. He says it's also that second wind a runner suddenly finds, or, that incredible strength people discover in moments of huge stress. He mentions a W.L. Kane from Oregon who apparently witnessed things like that.
Ordinary people tapping into extraordinary strength.
Exactly. And Collier stresses this power doesn't care if you're rich or poor. In fact, he says the greater your need, the more readily it responds.
Okay, that leads us to a really mind-bending concept.
Hmm?
Collier suggests everything around us, even solid matter, is actually a product of thought. How does he make that leap?
It is a leap. He starts by looking at the fundamentals of existence. He says,
Yeah.
look, whether life started with, primitive ape men 500,000 years ago, or if it came from a creator.
There had to be a starting point, a first cause.
Right. A first cause was needed. And from the very beginning, from fire mist to simple algae, then the amoeba, life evolved. And it always showed this unlimited resourcefulness, as he puts it.
Adapting, changing.
Exactly. That life principle was always demonstrating its power, meeting every new condition. He sees intelligence woven through all of it.
And he connects this life force to the physical stuff around us. Yeah.
Absolutely. He brings in the physics of his time, which was already pretty radical. He explains that atoms, which people used to think were like tiny, indestructible balls,
Yeah, like little billiard balls.
they were already understanding them differently. He describes them as positive and negative buttons of force or energy called protons and electrons. And listen to this. Without hardness, without density, without solidity, without even positive actuality.
Wow, so not solid at all.
Basically energy. He even quotes a British scientist saying, "Science now explains matter by explaining it away,"
Explaining it away.
which implies that matter is fundamentally electricity, pure energy. And if that's true, then the world we experience is, in a deep way, a creation of our own minds, or at least shaped by them.
Reflecting a larger universal mind.
That's the idea, that we're connected to this universal mind, this creative source, and our minds interact with it.
So our perception isn't just us interpreting things passively. We're actually creating our reality. Is that what he's saying?
That's a huge part of it. Think about how a landscape can seem beautiful and inspiring to one person.
And just rocks and trees to someone else.
Exactly. Warren Hilton, in a book called Applied Psychology, talked about how sensations depend on brain connections. He even joked that if our nerves were, spliced differently, we might hear the lightning and see the thunder.
Huh. Okay, I see the point.
It's like that old fable, the three blind men and the elephant.
Yeah, one feels the leg and says it's a tree. One feels the trunk and says it's a snake.
Right. Each perceives it differently based on their limited contact. Collier takes it further. We're not just interpreting the elephant of reality. Our thoughts are part of what makes it what it is for us. He says we're like a radio.
Tuning in.
Yeah, tuning into joy or sorrow, success or failure, all based on the frequency of our thoughts.
Okay, if our minds are that powerful, if we're like radios broadcasting our reality, how do we consciously take control? How do we direct this creative energy? What's the key?
Well, Collier's very clear on this. The first most crucial step, he says, is to know what this one thing is.
Know what you want.
Precisely. He observes that so many people just, struggle along in a vague sort of way, hoping for something to turn up. That doesn't work.
Right, it's too fuzzy.
You have to formulate a clear, specific message for your genie of your mind. No ambiguity.
So it needs to be a really clear, focused desire. Like a laser beam, not a floodlight.
Exactly. And the desire needs to be earnest, he says, intense. But just wanting it, even intensely, isn't the whole picture.
Okay, what else?
It has to be visualized. You need to see it clearly in your mind's eye. Then it needs to be persisted in, concentrated upon, and crucially, impressed upon your subconscious mind.
Impressed upon the subconscious. How do you do that?
Through that persistence, that concentration, that vivid visualization. He uses the analogy of building a house. You start with an idea, right? But then you need a detailed blueprint.
The blueprint guides the construction.
Yes. He points out that the seven wonders of the world existed first as powerful ideas, as blueprints in the minds of their builders. The mental creation came first.
That makes sense. And where does belief fit into this? Is desire and visualization enough?
Belief is absolutely essential. He quotes the classic line, "Belief is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen."
The evidence of things not seen.
It's the conviction. He tells this great story about the silent film star Harold Lloyd. In one movie, Lloyd's character gets a talisman,
Yeah.
which is actually just a worthless piece of junk, but he believes it gives him power and confidence. And because of that absolute belief, he performs all these incredibly daring stunts he'd never normally attempt.
So the talisman itself did nothing. It was the belief in it.
Exactly. The belief unlocked his potential. Collier says Napoleon's incredible self-belief was his real talisman. That inner conviction makes things seem attainable, possible.
And people like Edison, Carnegie.
He argues they use this principle too.
Yeah.
They leverage what he calls creative imagination and unwavering belief, often more than their formal education or starting advantages.
So conviction, not just smarts. Okay, boiling it down, what are the actionable steps he gives us? How do we actually do this?
He lays out 3 core steps. First, realize you have this power. Truly accept it. That's fundamental.
Okay, step 1, own the power.
Second, know exactly what you want. Clarity, precision, no vagueness.
Step 2, define the goal.
And third, center your thought upon that goal with singleness of purpose, unwavering focus, consistent mental attention.
Step 3, focus relentlessly.
Right. That's the mental discipline he talks about. It's not passive wishing. He even mentions Robert Louis Stevenson, the writer.
Treasure eye.
Yeah. Stevenson apparently talked about his mental brownies or inner consciousness helpers. He'd sort of give them a problem to work on overnight.
Sleep on it.
Exactly. And often, he said, the solution would just pop into his head in the morning. Collier sees that as the subconscious mind at work, guided by focused intent.
Okay, this leads to a big question. If there's this universal mind, this infinite supply, as Collier suggests, why do so many people experience lack, poverty, scarcity? How does he explain that apparent contradiction?
That's a crucial point he addresses. He states very directly that poverty is man-made.
Man-made. How?
Through the limits man puts upon himself. It's not an external condition imposed by the universe, in his view.
So the universe itself isn't stingy.
Not at all. He says, look at nature. It's incredibly bountiful. It supplies everything needed for growth, for sustenance. Think of birds finding food, wild animals thriving.
Of just the resources in the earth.
Exactly. He mentions all the coal, the oil, the minerals, vast resources. He says there's plenty for everyone. The limitation isn't in the supply.
It's in our ability to receive it, or believe we can.
Precisely. It's our capacity to perceive it, to receive it, and importantly, to apply our own creative power to access it. The limitation is internal.
So it really comes back to mindset again.
It does, and he takes this even further with money. He suggests that money itself is a mere idea of mind, a token of exchange.
Just an idea, not the ultimate goal.
Right. Wealth, therefore, isn't just about hoarding cash or property. Real wealth lies in ideas and in the productive application of those ideas.
Okay.
And then he really flips the script. He challenges the common idea that we need money. Instead, he says, money needs you.
Money needs me. What does that mean?
It needs your ideas to give it purpose, to give it an outlet. He says money sitting idle is just so much wasted energy without work to do.
Yeah.
It needs your ideas to flow into productive channels.
Wow. So money isn't this scarce thing we chase. It's abundant energy looking for good ideas to activate it. That's a totally different perspective.
It is a profound reframe, isn't it?
Yeah. So how does this translate into daily life or work? He talks about a law of attraction through service, right? Beyond giants like Henry Ford, how can, regular people apply this?
Well, that law of attraction through service is key. The core idea is we receive in proportion as we give.
Give first, then receive.
Essentially, yes. He uses Ford as an example because Ford didn't just amass money. He used it to create jobs, create products that offered value and comfort to millions. That creation, that service, is what attracted more resources.
So it's about value creation.
Absolutely. And Collier says this applies everywhere, in your job, in your business, whatever you do. It means consistently giving a little extra value, going beyond the bare minimum expectation.
Doing more than you're paid for, maybe.
In a sense, yes, but with the understanding that you're not being taken advantage of, you're proactively putting energy and value out into the system, seeking ways to serve genuinely. Because doing so, Collier believes, aligns you with this universal law of supply.
And that ultimately benefits you.
Yes. He quotes an article by Gardner Hunting from a magazine called Christian Business. Hunting apparently stated that a person gets back exactly what he gives out, only multiplied.
Multiplied.
It's about initiating that flow. Giving creates the channel for receiving more. It's not passive, it's proactive service.
This concept of mind power seems to permeate everything for Collier. It even extends really deeply into our physical health, doesn't it? He has some pretty radical things to say about sickness, about fear.
He really does, and you have to remember this was 1925. Some of these ideas were incredibly provocative, even shocking for the time.
So what's his take on fear?
He states it flatly. Fear is merely creative thought in negative form.
Creative thought, but negative.
Yes. He doesn't see fear as just an unpleasant emotion. He believes it actively works to manifest the thing we're afraid of.
So worrying about a recession could actually contribute to it. Worrying about getting sick could make you sick.
That's his line of reasoning. He points to things like the economic panic of 1920 as examples of collective fear creating negative results. And on a personal level, yes, fear of illness. He argues that your body itself, remember the protons and electrons?
Yeah, just energy, basically inert without the mind.
Exactly. He says the body is inert and senseless without your mind. Every single function, your heartbeat, breathing, digestion, gland secretions, everything, he claims, is ultimately controlled by mind.
So, following that logic, sickness isn't primarily a physical event for Collier. It starts mentally.
That seems to be his core argument. He describes sickness as merely the absence of health.
Like darkness is the absence of light.
Precisely that analogy. He's not just being poetic. He's saying health is our natural default state. Sickness is what happens when that natural state is disrupted, often by negative thought patterns like fear or limiting beliefs. It's a lack of alignment, not necessarily an external invader.
So what about medicine, doctors, treatments?
He's quite dismissive of drugs as the primary healers. He focuses heavily on the power of belief and the mind. He cites examples like supposed placebo effects curing serious conditions, or a story of a man whose milk apparently soured in his stomach for 45 years.
45 years.
Until he received some kind of mental treatment, and the problem vanished. Collier believed the mind corrected the issue.
He even quotes doctors from his time, right?
He does. He mentions prominent physicians who apparently admitted that 90% or over of ailments were either self-limiting, meaning they'd resolve on their own, or were psychically dominated.
90%. Dominated by the psyche, the mind.
It's a huge number. He concludes emphatically, mind is the healer.
That's what's a powerful claim. If the mind is the primary healer, what about things we often focus on for health, like exercise? Diet. Does Collier just throw those out the window?
Not entirely, but he reframes their importance. He suggests their principal good, their main benefit, is actually mental.
Mental.
By keeping the desired result, health, vitality constantly before the patient's mind, doing exercise, choosing healthy foods, reinforces the mental image and belief in health. It helps impress that goal onto the subconscious.
So the physical action supports the mental focus.
That's how he sees it. The real leverage, the real healing power, comes from the mind, not just the physical activity or the nutrients alone.
He mentions some scientific research too, doesn't he? About cells.
Yes, quite remarkably for the time, he highlights Dr. Alexis Carrel's work, which won a Nobel Prize, I believe, back in 1912. Carroll showed that living cells taken from an organism could be kept alive indefinitely in a lab setting.
Indefinitely.
Yeah.
Like they didn't age or die?
Apparently not, under the right conditions. They even doubled in size roughly every 24 hours. For Collier, this was profound.
Why? What did he take from that?
He saw it as evidence that our cells, our fundamental biology, aren't inherently programmed to decay and die quickly. It suggested that death, or at least aging as we know it, might not be a biological necessity.
Which led him to question aging itself.
Exactly. If cells can live indefinitely, why do we age and die? He concludes that aging is largely a state of mind, a belief we've accepted.
A state of mind. So the secret to youth, to vitality, according to Collier, is holding a specific mental picture. A belief.
Essentially, yes. He states it very clearly. Perfect youth or perfect health is merely a state of mind.
Just a state of mind.
He reminds us that our bodies are in constant flux, constantly rebuilding. Every cell, he claims, replaces itself within about 11 months.
So we're literally getting a new body every year, more or less.
That's the idea. So if the blueprint changes, the body should change. The belief that we must deteriorate with age, he argues, is a man-made law, a collective agreement we've bought into.
Not a biological imperative.
Not according to Collier.
Yeah.
He uses another story about a prince born with a crooked back.
Okay.
This prince, day after day, visualized himself standing perfectly straight and tall. He held that image persistently. And eventually, the story goes, his body conformed to that mental blueprint. He became straight.
Through visualization and belief.
That's the principle. By consistently, unwaveringly holding an image of perfection, perfect health, perfect youth, whatever your goal is, you impress that image onto your subconscious mind.
The genie of your mind.
Right. And that subconscious mind, which controls the body's rebuilding processes, will then construct your body according to that perfect pattern. It leads to continuous renewal, not inevitable decay.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into the secret of the ages, it really does uncover this incredibly powerful, kind of radical underlying message, doesn't it? That your mind, it's not just watching the world go by.
Not at all. It's actively participating, actively creating.
From your health to your finances to just, small daily things right up to your biggest dreams. Collier insists that power is inside you right now.
And the way to unlock it, the key, really boils down to a few things. Recognizing you're connected to this universal mind, this source of all creation. Understanding that supply is abundant, the law of supply.
And then applying it.
Yes, consistently applying focused desire, unwavering belief, and that idea of service. It's really about knowing deep down that your time of life, whatever stage you're at, should always be your best time.
Because you have the inner tools to make it that way.
Regardless of age or external circumstances, you hold the creative power.
It really feels like Collier is saying true mastery isn't about controlling things out there.
No, it's mastery of your own inner world. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your focus.
So maybe something for all of us to think about as we go about our day. If our surroundings, our experiences, are just reflections of our inner thoughts, what kind of world are you creating right now?
That's the question, isn't it?
And what incredible treasure, what potential might you unlock just by choosing, as Collier suggests, to think big?